Welcome back, everyone. Today I want to talk about the Electrocompaniet ECI 6DXII integrated amplifier. That's a mighty long name, but I'm going to give you 10 reasons why this is my favorite integrated amplifier all-in-one of all time. So we're going to count down to number 1, but number 10 is the design. Now, back in the 90s, I used to frequent a website called Audiophile. Many of you may know of this site, and I'm not here to promote Audiophile, but back then I used to be a frequent visitor to see who was selling what, and I'd be tempted to buy certain things. And I would see this brand, Electrocompaniet, on that website, and every now and again someone will be selling an amp or one of the CD players, and everybody would talk about how beautiful these pieces sounded, how they sounded like real music and quite different from other amplifiers or other sources. So I always wanted one of these pieces, but back then I could never afford to buy one, even on the used market. But I always was struck by the design with what I always thought was a glass front faceplate. It's plexiglass, and just a basic black box with that faceplate and the blue glowing letters and the gold brand name up top. Sometimes they looked a little gaudy in the past, but today they've got it down and the design looks really, really cool. Now in the flesh, these pieces look way better than they do in photos, but the ECI 6DXII is a full-size, large piece that is beautiful in design. It has all the inputs and outputs you could ask for. I'll get more into that in a bit. But yeah, number 10 is the design. I like the look of this company's products, from their CD player, from their DAC and streamer, to the integrateds, all the way to their power amps. And they have some really interesting power amps that I hope to take a look at next year. So number 9 is, this is a company celebrating their 50th anniversary. They started in the 70s, and they have been known from the 70s, from the get-go, for their unique amplifier sound. As a matter of fact, I believe the Michael Jackson Thriller, maybe the Thriller remaster, was done with Electrocompaniet amps because Michael Jackson liked the sound of them so much. They have a unique sound, a unique look, made in Norway, very, very high quality. So this is a company that's been around a long, long time, and over all of these decades, their representation in the USA has been a bit spotty. That's why a lot of people here do not really know about this brand. But they've been around a long, long time. Their products stand the test of time, and you can see products on eBay every now and again, because seeing these products sell used on the used market is kind of a rarity. So every now and again, you'll see something maybe from the 80s or the 90s, and one of their legendary pieces, and it's still working and it still looks really good. So this is a company, if you buy from them, you can be rest assured that they're going to be around for the long haul. This is not a startup or a fly-by-night. These guys have been around a long, long time. So number 8 is all about the power section. Now this integrated comes in 2 versions. There's the version I'm talking about today that I have, which comes with the Builtin Streamer and Builtin DAC. And for maybe $1,500 or so less, I could be off on that number a bit, you can get the version without the streamer and the DAC. So if you already have a streamer you love and a DAC you love, you can save some money and still get this beautiful sound that I'll talk about here in a bit, because that's really the star of the show. It's what really makes this piece unique. But no matter which version you go for, you're getting this amplifier. The power section here is very powerful, and it will drive just about any speaker kind of with an effortless ease. If you have speakers that dip down into 2 ohms, this thing's going to pump out 370 watts into 2 ohms. A lot of power into 8 ohm speakers, 120 watts. I had some 4 ohm speakers here that were 83 dB efficient, and this amp put out 200 watts per channel, but it could have been 1,000 because it sounded so effortless. It powered it with an absolute ease, and whether I was listening at a low volume or rocking out during midday, There was no sense of strain, and at low volume, everything was fleshed out and beautiful in the room. So the power section here is mighty impressive. It's a high current design, so it's not going to have any issues driving speakers. So say in the future you buy a set of speakers and you own this amp, but these speakers might be a tough load, tough to drive. I don't think this integrated is going to have any issues. So the power section is really, really special here, and that is my number 8 reason why I love this amp. Let's move on to number 7. So number 7, with the 6DX Mark II, the Builtin Streamer is fantastic. And here's how fantastic it is. I have and I've had it for a year now, the HiFi Rose RS130 streamer. It's a streamer only, doesn't have a DAC. It's like $5,200. It sounds crazy expensive for a piece that serves as just a streamer when you can buy a Wim Pro for $100. But the RS130 became my favorite streamer from the moment I heard it, and I can't imagine letting it go. That's why it's still here. Now, going into the ECI 6DXII with the HiFi Rose does bring a little bit of improvement in sound and imaging versus the Builtin Streamer, but it's a very, very small improvement. I'd say 10 to 15%. The Builtin Streamer of this integrated amp allows you to connect with Tidal Connect, which the HiFi Rose doesn't even allow you to do, Spotify Connect. It has AirPlay. You can hook up via 1 gigabit Ethernet, or you can use Wi-Fi, and you can stream Qobuz to it as well. It's fully featured as a streamer, and what I love about it is, just like the HiFi Rose RS130, it has no lag. A lot of Builtin streamers, I find, it can lag when you're switching songs quick, right? I like song discovery. I like hearing new artists. But within 10 seconds, if the song doesn't connect with me, I skip. And a lot of streamers, I've noticed, there's a lag in that streaming, or maybe a freeze up. Here with the Builtin Streamer, lag-free, smooth as silk. So the Builtin Streamer is actually quite nice. And there were moments when I said, man, is this the time to offload my RS130? Because I have one here that sounds almost as good. That's how good the streamer is inside of the ECI 6DXII. Very impressive. So the DAC here is phenomenal inside of the 6DXII, and this is my number 6 reason why this is my favorite integrated amplifier. Now, I've heard a ton of integrated amplifiers with built-in DACs, and for the most part, they're very good. Sometimes they're better than very good, and on a rare occasion, they're excellent. But usually when they're in that excellent point, we're talking about integrated amplifiers that are 10K and up. Now, the Electrocompaniet 6DXII is no cheap integrated. It comes in at $7,500 retail, I believe, for the version with the streamer and the DAC. But the built-in DAC here is phenomenal. I was comparing it with the $2,700 Live Harmony DAC, the $2,000 or so Dana Fripp's Pontus 15th anniversary, and a few other DACs that I have here, and it was very close. The only thing I noticed were differences. The built-in DAC of the Electrocompaniet is not as dynamic and forceful as the Live Harmony, and it's not as smooth and laid back as a Dana Fripp's, but it's somewhere in the middle. It offers a kind of a magical vocal performance, highs that are not aggressive or overdone, and lows. The bass here is fantastic, but it's kind of goes with that power amp to create this sound signature. But the DAC here was tuned by Electrocompaniet, and it keeps their famous, well-known sound signature. I guess it's not very well known here in the US, but it keeps the sound signature they're known for. The built-in DAC here is fantastic. And when I was listening to it compared to some of the other ones, there were times when I said, I like this one better, and it's a built-in DAC. And that usually never happens if I have some nice external DACs here. So the built-in DAC here is all 99% of people would need, but I will say, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute, it can be improved. For example, if I take the brand's ECM1 Mark II dedicated streamer and DAC, which comes in at over 5K, there is a definite improvement in the sound quality and the transparency in the imaging while keeping that sound signature that Electrocompaniet is known for, which is extremely musical, extremely rich, some body and warmth in the mids. It's a shade dark versus being a shade bright, and it just fills the room with the most musical sound. In my written review I posted a week or two ago, I said this is the sound I would expect from a 20,000 and up integrated amplifier, because to me, this is what music sounds like. So with that external streamer going into the 6DXII, there is a definite improvement in the sound quality, though most people could easily live with the one built into the unit. So very, very good DAC, amazing for a built-in. I will go as far as to say this is the best built-in DAC I've heard in an all-in-one integrated amp. All right, how about number 5? Now, when we get into streaming integrated amplifiers, there's always an app involved. And I usually dislike all of the apps that come with streamers. So I'm not a fan of the Lumen app. Hopefully they've improved it by now. The Eversolo app was pretty good. The HiFi Rose app is pretty good. The Electrocompaniet app, if you download it, and you download it to set up the unit when you first get it, it takes a minute or two. But it's very neatly laid out. It's easy to understand and use, and I had zero issues with it. So it surprised me because the app is actually decent from Electrocompaniet. Now if I'm streaming Tidal or Spotify, I like to use those apps directly, and they connect to this without an issue. Again, no dropouts have been experienced, no freeze-ups, and no lag. So the app is really good, but remember, you can connect to it directly using Tidal or Spotify. And if you're going direct into this using the Builtin Streamer and DAC, I will say Tidal sounds phenomenal and Spotify sounds phenomenal. Going back and forth, there were times, as usual, I preferred the Spotify sound coming from my speakers. So let's move on to number 4. All right, moving on to number 4. Number 4 reason why I love this integrated amp so much, it's Rune ready. Now, I do have Rune, I do use Rune, but I must admit, me personally, I use the Connect features more, but Rune is a fabulous piece of software, music management, especially if you have a lot of your own music on a hard drive or a server. Rune is remarkable. You can also stream Tidal and Qobuz through Rune. And not all devices are Rune ready. Now, all devices do not work with Rune, but Electrocompaniet, this integrated amp out of the box, works with Rune. So it's pretty cool to have that as a feature, because a lot of you do use Rune, and it's well worth the investment, especially if you have a lot of your own music. So number 3, I like the fact that this has RCA and XLR inputs and outputs. I'll talk about that in a minute as well. This amp does seem to sound better using XLR cables. I tested it with RCAs. I have Nordost Red Dawn here in RCA and XLR, and I tested both, and the XLR to me seemed a little more dynamic, even when volume matching between the two. It sounded a little more dynamic, a little richer, a little more room filling. It was a small difference, but I did find that the balanced connections did, in this case, present a better sound. I don't always find that. Sometimes I find the balanced inputs to sound a little harder, but in this case, they just sounded more organic and richer. So I like the fact that it has both options. Number 2, another thing that not all integrated amps have, but the 6DXII does, I love that it has a preamp output, meaning if you ever want to try a different amplifier section and bypass the one inside of the integrated amp, I don't know why anybody would want to do that, because the one in this is so excellent. But say you have a collection of power amps, and say you have a Class A, a Class D, and various types. you can hook it up to the 6DXII and use it as a preamp for all of your sources and allow your own power amp to power the speakers. So I love that it's future-proofed in this way. And testing it as a preamp, I tested it into the Galleon A20 Class A amp, and it sounded beautiful, rich, had all the characteristics that that amp has, the airy highs, the beautiful mid-range, and the wonderful bass. It has a unique sound signature, and it does sound different. It did sound different from the built-in amp of the Electrocompaniet. So for all of you out there who have power amps and you're like, well, I don't want an integrated because I love my power amps, you can use this as a preamp to those. And the preamp here is actually very, very good. I wouldn't say it's top tier level preamp, but it's really, really good. Okay, we're down to the number one reason why this amp is my favorite integrated all-in-one of all time. And I'm talking favorite of all time above any, no matter the price. This one impressed me more than any of those, and it's mainly due to this reason. Number one, the sound quality. This is what Electrocompaniet is known for. And when I sit down and listen to this piece, whether it's with its built-in DAC and streamer, whether I'm using my RS-130, whether I'm using the external streamer and DAC from Electrocompaniet, I can sit down in here and just get lost for hours in the music. And it never, ever, ever gets tiring because it kind of speaks a musical language. And I've talked about this before with some other select pieces that just had such a musical flow and vibe. But this one does it with the least amount of offensive sounds. There's nothing offensive about this, no matter what I listen to. Some amps, a couple that I recently reviewed, they gave the same kind of sound signature no matter what I played, meaning the amp was injecting its own flavor. Now, I will be the first to say that I feel this amp does inject a flavor, but that flavor is musicality, and it is remarkable. This is what music, to me, to these ears, maybe not to you, this is what music is supposed to sound like. It has body, it has a touch of warmth, but it's not bloated. It's not veiled in any way. The details are here, and when I'm using the dedicated streamer into it, there is a three-dimensionality going on that is just so beautiful and so organic because it's never etched or overdone. It's just right. The bass is so deep and so full. It's making the triangle duetto, 40th duetto Magellans here sound just remarkable. These speakers, the triangle 40th duettos, have become my, I said top 3 two-way bookshelves. They're now in my top 2 three-way or two-way bookshelves. They also are the opposite of bright and lean. These have body, richness. They're capable of doing a holographic three-dimensional soundstage with warmth and body. And the treble is one of the finest I've heard. I've said that in the review a while back of these speakers. But it allows you to kind of walk into the soundstage. There's a wide sweet spot with these, is what I'm trying to say. Some speakers, you have to sit in that extreme sweet spot point to get those three-dimensional imaging effects. With these, you can have a little couch there, and no matter where you sit, you don't have to be right in the center. You're getting the effects of that soundstage. But there is body, there is warmth, there is magic in the sound, and there's just something about the Electrocompaniet sound that is just purely musical. This is the finest sounding all-in-one integrated or integrated amp in general that I've ever heard, and it's a perfect match to the 40th anniversary duettos from Triangle. And I've heard a lot of people telling me Triangle speakers are bright. These are not bright in any way. These are beautiful, gorgeous speakers that sound amazing. So this amplifier is really beautiful in looks, wonderful in build, made in Norway, extremely powerful, can drive any speaker, has a really fantastic built-in streamer. The DAC in here is phenomenal, and it has a preamp out. You can use a different amp, though I don't think you're going to want to. And let me tell you about two of the cons, two of the things that I think could be improved here. So we got the 10 reasons I love this amp. Here are two things I would love to see fixed or improved. The remote control is kind of generic. It's plastic with a ton of buttons. It looks like an AV receiver remote. I would like to see one that's more custom, that kind of fits more with the quality of the amp. Something a little more basic, but the remote works. It's not a deal breaker by any stretch of the imagination. I would just like to see something a little more special because the amplifier itself I consider to be very special. Also, when I power this up, say I'm using my Rode streamer into the external DAC into the ECI 6DXII, but let's just say I'm just using the ECI 6DXII with this built-in streamer and DAC. We'll start there. If I do that, everything's fine. When I turn it off and turn it back on, it starts up in media mode, which is the streamer. But say I have the HiFi rows going to it, and I'm using the coaxial input. Now I'm listening and listening, I'm enjoying it. I turn it off. The next day I go to turn it on, it starts back up in media mode. I wish it would start back up in the mode, in the input you were using last. So I'm using the coax input sometimes. Sometimes I'm using the balanced CD input from the dedicated DAC, from the rows going into that dedicated DAC. And it always starts back up in media mode. So then I have to physically, or using the remote or the buttons on the front, change it back to CD or coax or whatever I used it for. I would love to see it start back up or have a memory of the last input you were using. And I'd like to see that in the streamer too, because the streamer and DAC, the dedicated unit, the ECM1 Mark II dedicated streamer DAC does the same thing. But I think that would be an easy fix for Electrocompaniet. Have it go back to the input you were last listening to. Other than that, there are no negatives here for me. I feel it's priced right. I feel it's priced fairly because, like I said, I had an amplifier here that was close to 30 grand and all-in-one integrated. And I like this one better in sound. I like this one better in the streaming function. So I find it to be high priced at $7,500. It puts it out of reach for many people. But if it's in your price range, this is an absolute steal. The sound quality is the star of the show, and everything you've heard about the Electrocompaniet sound is very true. I also tried this amp with other speakers and it powered them beautifully. The Qualio IQ Ultras sounded warmer, bigger, fatter, but still holographic and detailed with this amp versus other amps that brought a leaner mid-range sound to those speakers, but albeit with more openness. So there you go. That's the 10 reasons why this is my favorite integrated all-in-one of all time. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, thumbs up and subscribe. I have reviews coming down the road. Pure Audio Project Duet 15s, is that what they're called? They're on the way to me now, from what I understand. I'll have the Electrocompaniet streamer and DAC review as well. And I have the Dana Fripp's Pontus 15th review coming soon. And there's 3 or 4 others I'm working on. So if you want to see those, thumbs up, subscribe, hit the notifications, turn them on, and I will see you in the next one. See you then.